The laughter hit before I even stepped into the garden. Sharp, mean, familiar. "Don't bother getting her a chair," my Uncle Mark said, voice echoing across the patio. "She doesn't deserve one. Let her stand. It's not like her broke husband's here to pull it out for her." Before we begin, drop a comment and tell us where are you from and from which city you're watching our videos. And after watching the whole video, don't forget to tell us what would you do in this situation? Be honest, tell me in the comments below. We read every comment. Let's begin. The table roared with laughter. My cousins, my aunts, their well-dressed spouses, everyone pretending cruelty was just good fun. I stood frozen for a second, clutching the small box I'd brought as a gift for Grandma's 80th birthday. I could feel every stare on me, like invisible hands trying to push me lower. My throat burned, but I swallowed it down. I forced a faint smile. "Good evening, everyone." Uncle Mark smirked. "Evening, Ava. Didn't think you'd actually show up. Thought maybe your husband ran out of gas money again." The laughter started again. My Aunt Linda shook her head. "Mark, stop it," she said with that fake politeness only she could manage. "Don't embarrass her. She's trying her best." That stung more than the joke. I looked around the long table under the white canopy, crystal glasses, golden cutlery, laughter rising over soft music. Every seat taken. None left for me. My father avoided my eyes. My mother just sipped her wine. "Don't worry about me," I said quietly, setting the gift box down at the far end. "I'll stand." Uncle Mark chuckled. "See? She's used to it. Always standing behind someone richer." A flash of heat shot through me, but I stayed calm. Years of swallowing humiliation had trained me for this moment. I stood tall, shoulders straight, watching them sip champagne as if kindness cost too much. My cousin Jenny leaned over with a smirk. "Where's your husband anyway?" "Still fixing cars." I met her eyes. "Still owning the garage." She blinked, caught off guard, but Uncle Mark jumped in before she could answer. "Garage? Please. Probably still changing oil for $50 a day. Should have married smart, Ava." I smiled faintly, even though my palms trembled. "Maybe, but I married kind." That shut him up for a beat, just long enough for the sound to reach us. A faint hum in the distance. Growing louder. Someone laughed nervously. "Is that a plane?" "No," my cousin muttered, squinting toward the horizon. That's a helicopter." The hum deepened, the air trembling. Glasses rattled. Napkins fluttered. Guests started rising from their seats, looking around in confusion. And then the wind hit. Leaves spun across the yard as a sleek black helicopter descended behind the hedges, the blades sending everyone's hair and pride flying. The noise was deafening. People shielded their faces. My uncle's jaw went slack. The side door opened. A man in a dark suit stepped out, tall, steady, eyes searching through the crowd, until they found me.
"Luke."
My husband walked through the swirling dust and startled stares like he'd done it 100 times before. No arrogance. No rush. Just calm, quiet certainty. He reached me, brushing a strand of hair from my face with a soft smile. "Sorry I'm late, love," he said, his voice warm against the sudden silence. The flight path took longer than expected. No one laughed this time. Uncle Mark's mouth hung open. My father looked like he'd seen a ghost. Luke slipped an arm around me, his tone casual as he glanced at the empty spot near the head of the table. "Mind if I sit here?" No one answered. He looked at me again, smiling gently. "Or, do you want me to stand with you?" I smiled back. "I think we've both earned a seat." And for the first time in years, they didn't have a single thing to say. When the helicopter blades slowed to a soft hum, the garden felt eerily quiet. The same people who'd been laughing moments ago now sat frozen, their smiles gone, their champagne glasses trembling slightly in their hands. Luke slipped off his sunglasses and looked around calmly, every movement controlled, deliberate, confident. "Beautiful setup," he said lightly, his voice carrying just enough to be heard. I almost missed it. The GPS doesn't show gatherings this exclusive. His tone was polite, but the weight beneath it wasn't lost on anyone. My Uncle Mark forced a dry laugh, fumbling for his napkin. Well, you know how it is, family dinners. No need for all that dramatic entrance. Luke's lips twitched into a small smile. Sorry about the noise. My schedule's been crazy, and landing nearby was faster than driving in traffic. Every eye followed him as he pulled out the chair beside me, the very one Uncle Mark had denied me minutes earlier. He placed a hand on my shoulder before sitting. You okay, Ava? I'm fine, I said softly, though my pulse was racing. Grandma, sitting near the center, broke the silence first. Well, I'll be darned, she said with a warm smile. You made quite an entrance, young man. Luke chuckled. Couldn't let Ava stand alone on her grandmother's birthday. That one line landed heavier than any insult thrown earlier. My mother's fork paused midair. Uncle Mark's smirk dissolved completely. Then Luke reached into his inner pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. He handed it to Grandma with both hands. Happy birthday, ma'am. Ava told me how much you miss wearing your old brooch since it broke. I had one remade from a custom jeweler in New York. Same design, just stronger this time. Grandma's wrinkled fingers trembled as she opened it. Inside lay an identical lilac brooch, glinting under the garden lights. For a second, she just stared at it, her lips parting. Then she smiled, eyes glistening. You remembered the flower, the exact one. Luke smiled gently. Ava told me it meant something special. That's when I noticed how everyone's faces shifted, from superiority to disbelief to quiet shame. These were people who prided themselves on power, money, and appearances. And yet, Luke's gesture, thoughtful, grounded, human, felt like a mirror they weren't ready to look into. Uncle Mark coughed, desperate to reclaim control. So, Luke, he said, swirling his wine. What do you do again? Mechanic, right? Luke didn't even flinch. Started as one, yes. He leaned back slightly, relaxed. Now I own the chain. Turner Automotive Group. 6 locations across 3 states. The sound that came next wasn't laughter. It was the kind of stunned quiet where no one dares breathe wrong. My cousin Jenny dropped her fork. You own the group? She stammered. The one that just partnered with Tesla? Luke smiled faintly. That's the one. Uncle Mark's wine glass froze midair. You mean that was you? Luke nodded once. A lot of late nights, a few missed holidays, but yeah, it's ours now. He didn't say it to brag. He said it like a man who'd fought too hard to ever need to prove himself again. Grandma beamed. I always said hard work pays off, she said proudly. You two make a fine team. Luke smiled at her. Ava's the real reason any of this exists. When I was fixing cars in a rented garage, she handled the clients, the books, the nights I almost gave up. She believed in me before I had anything to show for it. That broke something inside me. My throat tightened, but I managed a small smile. We built it together. Across the table, my father looked down, his guilt visible even in the dim light. He told me years ago Luke would drag me down. That love doesn't pay bills. That dreams don't build futures. But right now, those dreams had landed behind the garden in the form of a helicopter. Luke lifted his glass slightly toward Uncle Mark. You were right about one thing, he said smoothly. Ava is used to standing. She stood by me when no one else would. The words hung in the air, heavy and calm, not shouted, not bitter, just true. Uncle Mark's jaw flexed. He mumbled something about needing more ice and practically fled toward the house. The rest sat in awkward silence, trying to recover their dignity. Luke leaned closer to me, whispering, You sure you want to stay for dessert? I grinned faintly. Leaving would be the sweetest dessert. He chuckled, brushing his thumb across my knuckles. Then let's give them something to remember. We stood, thanking Grandma again, and as we began walking back toward the helicopter, the entire table watched, not one word spoken. Just stunned faces reflecting regret, envy, and the kind of silence that tastes like humiliation. The evening air was cool against my skin. I could hear whispers start behind us, frantic and desperate, but I didn't look back. As we reached the edge of the garden, Grandma called out, Ava. I turned. She smiled at me, that proud, knowing kind of smile only grandmothers have. Never let them make you small again. I nodded, tears stinging my eyes. Luke helped me into the helicopter, his hand steady in mine. As the blades roared to life again, I caught one last glimpse of the table. All those people who once saw me as less now shrinking in their seats, heads low. The wind whipped through my hair as we lifted off. Luke looked at me, half grinning. Still think I should have driven? I laughed softly, shaking my head.
No.
That was perfect. Below us, the lights of the garden grew smaller, the people tinier, their voices gone. For the first time in a long time, I felt weightless. Not because we were in the air, but because I'd finally stopped carrying the shame they'd tried to hand me. And as the helicopter soared into the night sky, I realized something I'd never dared to before, that sometimes silence isn't weakness. It's the sound right before the world finally sees your worth. As the helicopter carried us through the night, city lights twinkled beneath like scattered gold dust. I stared out the window, trying to process what just happened. A few hours ago, I was standing alone at that table, humiliated in front of everyone I grew up around. 10 minutes later, those same people were too stunned to breathe. Luke sat beside me, his hand resting gently on mine. You okay? He asked softly. I'm trying to believe it wasn't a dream. He smiled faintly. If it was, we made sure they won't forget it. When we landed on the helipad above our new company office, sleek glass walls reflecting the skyline, I realized how much had changed. Not just in our lives, but in the way I saw myself. Luke led me to the elevator, his arm around my shoulders. You know, when I first started that little auto shop, he said, your uncle came by once. I looked up at him. He did. He nodded.
Yeah.
Told me men like me don't build companies. They just fix other people's dreams. I felt my chest tighten. You never told me that. He shrugged lightly. Didn't want to give his words power. Then he turned to me with a quiet smile. But you know what kept me going that night? You bringing dinner in a paper bag, sitting beside me on the floor of that garage, telling me, you'll build something they'll never understand. You said it like you already saw it. Tears welled up, but I blinked them away. I guess I was right. He smiled, pressing the elevator button. More than right. You believed in me before I did. The doors opened to a modern office bathed in warm light. The walls were lined with framed photos. The first garage, our first team of 5, the first logo we'd sketched on a napkin. I walked slowly across the marble floor, each photo reminding me of those late nights when we'd shared cheap coffee and wild dreams no one believed in. Luke leaned against the glass desk, watching me quietly. You know what I realized tonight? I turned toward him. That family never hated me, because I wasn't enough. They hated me because I made you stop needing their approval. I exhaled slowly. They've always treated love like a transaction. If it doesn't come wrapped in money, they don't recognize it. He smiled faintly. And now money listens to us. We both laughed, not in arrogance, but in disbelief at how far we'd come. Then my phone buzzed. A text from my cousin Jenny. Ava, I'm so sorry for how everyone acted tonight. I didn't know Luke was so successful. Please tell him the brooch gift was beautiful. Maybe we could all have dinner soon? I stared at the message for a long second before showing it to Luke. He chuckled. There it is. The shift. The shift. The moment they realize the person they mocked is the one they should have respected all along. I sighed, setting the phone down. It's not even about revenge anymore. I just wish they'd seen us without needing proof. He reached for my hand again. They saw what they wanted to. But tonight, they saw who you really are. I smiled quietly. Still, I think I enjoyed your entrance a little too much. He laughed. Worth every drop of fuel. We left the office a little after midnight, stepping into the cool night air. The city hummed below, alive, unstoppable. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was running behind. I felt like I'd finally caught up to my own worth, my own peace. As we drove home in silence, my mind drifted back to that garden. The sharp laughter, the sting in my chest, the way my hands had trembled as I stood alone. That moment used to define me. Now it empowered me. When we got home, the house lights glowed softly against the night. Luke opened the door for me, but before stepping inside, I turned to him. "Luke," I said quietly, "I don't ever want to go back there." He nodded, slipping his arm around me. "You don't have to. Let them come to us next time." I smiled faintly. "If they dare." He leaned closer, whispering, "They will. People always find their way back to the ones they underestimated." The next morning, the texts kept coming. Cousins, aunts, even my father, all suddenly remembering how much they'd missed me. My mom wrote, "Your uncle feels terrible about what he said. He was just teasing. We're proud of you both." Proud. That word almost made me laugh. They weren't proud, they were embarrassed. But I didn't respond. Not out of spite, but peace. I finally understood what Luke had always said. You don't owe explanations to people who only value you when you shine. Later that day, Luke called me into his office. He looked up from his laptop with that mischievous smile I knew too well. "What now?" I asked, crossing my arms. He spun the screen toward me, a news headline flashing across it. Turner Automotive Group expands with new luxury division. CEO Luke Turner and co-founder Ava Turner lead the launch. My name, right next to his. My throat tightened. "You didn't have to." "I did," he interrupted softly. "You built this with me. You've been quiet too long." For a moment, I couldn't speak. Then I just reached out, taking his hand. "You really are full of surprises." He smirked. "That's what keeps you married to me." We both laughed. But deep down, I knew this wasn't just a business victory. It was a story of every insult, every slight, every time I'd stood quietly while others decided my worth. Tonight, they saw the truth they'd spent years denying. The broke mechanic they mocked had become the man who built an empire, and the woman they laughed at stood right beside him, never once letting go. As the sun dipped behind the skyline that evening, I whispered to myself, they finally saw who I really married. And for once, that was enough. 2 weeks passed. The sting of that night had faded, replaced by something colder, silence. Not the kind that hurt, but the kind that protected. For the first time in years, my phone stayed quiet. No gossip, no invitations, no passive-aggressive family dinners. Just peace. Until that Saturday morning. Luke and I were having coffee on the patio when the hum of car engines filled our driveway. 3 black SUVs rolled up, tires crunching against the gravel. I frowned, setting my cup down. "Are we expecting anyone?" Luke stood, slipping his sunglasses on. "Not unless the family suddenly found GPS." And he was right. The doors opened, and one by one, the same people who'd laughed at me 2 weeks ago stepped out. Uncle Mark, Aunt Linda, my parents, and 2 cousins trailing behind like shadows. Every single one dressed like they were walking into a courtroom. "Wow," Luke muttered under his breath. "Guess we made an impression." I took a breath and walked down the steps, calm and unbothered. Uncle Mark tried to smile, but it came out stiff. "Ava, sweetheart," he said. "We wanted to stop by. You know, to apologize for that little misunderstanding." "Misunderstanding," I repeated softly. He rubbed the back of his neck. "You know how people talk. Things get out of hand." Luke folded his arms. "No, I don't know how people talk when they think others can't hear them. But I'm curious, which part was the joke? The no-chair part? Or the part about me being too broke to show my face?" No one answered. The silence hit hard. My father finally spoke up. "Son, we didn't mean to." Luke cut him off gently but firmly. "I'm not your son." That one sentence made my mother's hand tremble. I stepped forward, my tone steady. "You didn't come here for me, did you? You came because your friends won't stop talking about that helicopter landing in Grandma's garden." Uncle Mark opened his mouth, but nothing came out. I continued, "You wanted to laugh at me for marrying a mechanic. And when that didn't fit your story anymore, you decided to rewrite it." Aunt Linda sighed. "We just want to move on, Ava." I tilted my head. "Move on? You all made it very clear where I stood in your family. You can move on, just not through my front door." The words left my mouth before I even thought about them. They didn't come from anger, they came from freedom. Luke slipped his hand into mine, silent but proud. My father's voice softened. Ava, please. We were wrong. We didn't know he'd turn out so successful. That line, so successful, hit me like lightning. It wasn't an apology. It was a confession of values. They didn't regret humiliating me. They regretted being wrong about his wallet. I met his eyes calmly. You should have cared about how he treated me, not how much he made. No one spoke. Aunt Linda's eyes darted toward the helicopter pad visible from our yard, shimmering in the sunlight. Luke smiled faintly. Don't worry. We're not the kind of people who hold grudges. But we also don't repeat lessons we've already learned. It was polite, but final. Uncle Mark cleared his throat, muttered something about being in touch, and they began walking back toward the cars, avoiding eye contact. My father looked like he wanted to say more, but Luke's steady hand on my back stopped him. As the engine started and the cars rolled away, I let out a deep breath. For years, I'd begged for a seat at their table. Today, they were the ones standing outside mine. Luke turned to me, his eyes soft. You handled that better than I ever could. I smiled faintly. I didn't need revenge, Luke. Just truth. And they finally saw it. He kissed my forehead, whispering, they didn't just see it. They'll never forget it. The breeze carried the last traces of exhaust away, leaving only quiet, the good kind. The kind that said the past was finally done. And as I leaned into him, watching the empty driveway, I realized something powerful. I didn't need them to clap for me. I just needed to stop performing for people who never deserved a show. That night, as the city lights glimmered beyond our windows, I felt it. The peace that comes not from winning, but from walking away stronger than they ever expected. Because sometimes, the best revenge isn't a grand gesture. It's simply living well enough that the people who once doubted you can't look you in the eye anymore. And that's exactly what we did.